Emotional moment. Yoga instructor breaks down in tears on the phone to her parents after she was rescued following 17 days lost in a Hawaii forest, eating moths and sleeping in a boar's den. That's the second Hawaii news story, and I think I accidentally pronounced that correctly because I didn't mean to say it that way. Hawaii. That's probably not right. I don't know about Hawaii. I know a lot about almost everything, but I know almost nothing about Hawaii because I don't care. It doesn't interest me. If I ever want to go to paradise, it would have to be the Caribbean. I'd want to go to the Caribbean because you know there are more sunken gold treasures there. Sunken gold treasures. All those gold treasures hiding out, sinking. I just feel like if you're in the Caribbean, there's a possibility that you might find a pirate ship. And I don't think there's any pirate ships in Hawaii because we didn't, white man didn't set foot in that region of the world we weren't too involved there until after all the most interesting parts of history were done for. But this is interesting because it's emotional and it's tearful, and you have to wonder why. Because getting lost in the forest in Hawaii to me sounds like fun, like a dream. I mean, as a child, it certainly would have been a dream. Although at that time, I wouldn't have known how treacherous it is to be lost in the wilderness. But one thing that is to be said about being lost in the wilderness is if you do get lost, you want that wilderness to be Hawaii. I mean, they have boars, I guess, and those can actually be very dangerous. I probably heard that boars are an invasive species that we introduced, and they can be deadly under the right circumstances, but I feel like Hawaiian boars would probably be pretty laid back. I wouldn't be too afraid of getting eaten by them. What you want to watch out for are the razorbacks, because their backs are made out of razors and they slice you up or something like that. I think I heard that somewhere. It's so funny that what's important about the story in describing it is that she's a yoga instructor. It's not relevant to the overarching narrative is that she got lost in the Hawaiian wilderness. And actually, I don't even know if that Hawaii does have wilderness. I think a wilderness can only be found like in the Midwest or like the West and the Northwest in Canada. Anything else isn't really wilderness, is it? I mean, I guess it is, but you don't think that. I mean, I suppose there's wilderness in upstate New York and that sort of territory. But it would the wilds of like Florida, would that be called wilderness? But you kind of think of not being too wild because it's been so occupied. It's not that wild. I mean, we stripped away all the wildness. We strip mined it. The wild stuff has been strip mined. It's funny how, now that I think about it, it's almost like these news stories they're like a movie pitch. So we got a lady, she's lost in the forest. I think we've seen this movie before. All right, but this lady, she's a yoga instructor. She teaches yoga. She doesn't know anything about the world. All right, that's good. That's something different. But how does she bring the yoga stuff to bear? I mean, is she going to be really flexible, and when she gets caught and stuff, she's going to be able to stretch her way out? This isn't like, dangerous. She's like in Hawaii. How is she going to use her yoga powers? Well, there are wild boars. Wild boars. Okay. I don't know if there's I've seen shark movies, bear movies. I don't think I've ever seen like wild boar movies. Frail Chicago businessman, 76, charged with the same crime as Jussie Smollett, was fined and now has a criminal record, while the disgraced actor who cost the city $130,000 by refusing to admit culpability had all charges dropped. I mean, that's a pure narrative. I mean, they may as well just call this editorializing. There's no relationship between these two people except one that's sort of conceptual. Mr. Robert Racky, as you can see, didn't falsify a hate crime. He apparently accused somebody of something. Dramatically different stories. Also, I think Smollett probably cost the city more than $130,000 when all is said and done. But I don't think the city cares because they probably made more profit off of the case than not. They're keeping a vindictive criminal justice system busy with busy work that otherwise wouldn't exist because they have far more law enforcement than they have crime. Well, Chicago is actually one of maybe the rare exceptions. The vast majority of LEA institutions across the United States have very little legitimate work to do. So I'm not sure that Chicago actually really cares all that much about the Jussie Smollett case. If anything, it makes them look like angels because they are so liberal that they were able to forgive this actor for draw attention to race hatreds. But I mean, you know that the actual beat cops, the men on the street, they probably hate his freaking guts. So whatever PR Chicago got out of it, it probably is a bit of a wash. Republican Representative Liz Cheney says texts between FBI lovers during the Russia investigation sound an awful lot like a coup and could well be treason. Well, it's not treason because treason has a very distinct definition in the Constitution, so it's obviously not that. And so she hurts her case by throwing that in with coup because it does sound an awful lot like a coup, a soft coup. Treason is kind of the one word. It's like the harshest word we have for betraying a country, but it also is almost the least relevant. It's the least often realized because treason is defined in the Constitution as actually conspiring with literal enemies of the state. And the only way that you can be an enemy of the state is by being at war with the state. Otherwise, you're not an enemy. You might be your antagonists, and you may be belligerents, among other things. But you can't legitimately be called an enemy of the state. And so, unless these cooers were conspiring with that, no, actually, we're not at war with anybody, and we haven't been since 1940s because Korea was not a war and Vietnam was not a war. We could just call it war, but they're not recognized as wars. How is that for being wishy-washy? YouTube star shares dramatic footage of his wife falling off a cliff in Hawaii. Social media users slam the family for being melodramatic for clicks. Well, I'm going to be melodramatic and click on this link. Jenny, oh my gosh. Your wife falls off a cliff and you say, oh my gosh. He was thinking about the children.
Sorry. So scared. So stupid.
I think that was stupid. He didn't want to curse in front of his children. So he said, oh my gosh. That was some foresight. Don't move my arm! Don't move my arm! She screams before telling him she's okay. She's okay. I saw the video and her arm is the thing that looked least like it had injury. Like her arm is like her spine and it broke. I wonder who's filming this. Look at that.
Oh my gosh! Are you okay? Sure changes your perspective.
Why did she keep rolling? Why didn't she like grab onto a vine or something? And I don't mean an internet vine. You can't grab an internet vine and hold on to it because it's just ethereal. And also Vine doesn't exist anymore. Well, that was Robert Reads the News. And if you enjoyed this video, seek medical help.